The Lakers shocked the NBA world with their acquisition of Dorian Finney-Smith yesterday. D'Angelo Russell heading to the Brooklyn Nets as part of the deal as well, plus 3 second-round picks heading to Brooklyn. But that is not the only move that is coming up on the NBA's trade market. We've got until the February 6th trade deadline, and there's a number of other veterans that teams are already earmarking as available for second-round draft capital. We're going to take a look at those players that are going to be out there on the market. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Hit the subscribe button. Said it before, but only about 20% of you watching this video right now are actually subscribed to the channel. If you're in that 80%, hit the subscribe button right now. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything, and we think you're going to like it. Joining me is Donnie Freeman. Donnie, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. It's pretty funny how that 20%, 80% split just doesn't seem to change. Right? It's kind of fishy there. It just doesn't change.
Well, that's because we're growing, Donnie. We're getting even as more people are subscribing, we're getting more eyeballs on us as the channel continues to grow, which, by the way, we are extremely thankful for and so happy that so many of you have come over and found us here and you're hanging out with us and talking hoops all the time. So we appreciate all of you. But yeah, as we continue to grow, we do seem to stick to that number. Would love to blow past that number though. So hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So for today, I wanted to ask you something very quickly because we didn't get the chance to do it yesterday. How are you feeling about the trade that went down? We didn't get the chance to talk about it.
I like the trade. I'll tell you what, I like the trade for the Lakers. I like the trade for the Nets. It's possible the Nets could flip D'Angelo Russell in another deal. Now, they'd have to flip him by himself, but they could always, he's a fairly decent-sized expiring contract, so maybe there's something they can do there. I like that they got more second-round draft capital. They're now loaded up on second-round draft picks, which we've seen under the new CBA. Second-rounders do absolutely matter. If you find somebody in the second round, it's a huge benefit to your franchise, especially if you use what's affectionately known as the Rob Pelinka rule to sign that player for a 4-year deal or even a 3-year deal there. So the added value, I think, for second round picks is certainly there. So I like the deal for the Nets. I like it for the Lakers to add in a defensive minded wing that can also shoot and give you something there. So I think this is a good move. I also think this is a good sign for the market as a whole that we're seeing deals like this get done right now, because I'll tell you what, Donnie, there's going to be a reaction to this. Other teams that missed out, because there were a lot of teams in on Dorian Finney-Smith. And of course, we've heard of the Memphis Grizzlies, them being the closest to getting a deal done, and the Nets ultimately picking the Lakers deal. But other teams are going to pivot. The Grizzlies are going to pivot, maybe towards Cam Johnson. I do think that this is a very good sign that we've seen now 3 trades get done before the calendar flips to 2025. And I think it bodes well for what's going to be a really active and exciting trade market as we get closer to February 6th.
Here's to hoping. But yeah, seeing the trade go down the way that it did, my immediate reaction was, thank you. The market is going to love this. This is going to be great. All these teams are trying to ask for first-round picks, as they should, as they typically do. But that's not how things have gone so far. So I'm really excited about that piece of it.
So let's take a look at some of the other value players that could be had for second-round picks. Now that we know Dennis Schroeder, now we've got also Dorian Finney-Smith. By the way, how many the selling teams on the market have got to be just staring daggers right now at the Brooklyn Nets because they've essentially set the market now at veterans can be had for second-round draft picks. You don't have to give up a first in order to get these guys. But we look at this, some of the names mentioned by Mark Stein, Nikola Vučević, Kyle Kuzma. These are 2 clubs in the Chicago Bulls, the Washington Wizards, that have been trying to get first-round draft compensation. I still think Kuzma may indeed go for a first, but maybe now the way the market is softening, it's more of like a protected first. And Vučević, I think he does fit into that category with Dorian Finney-Smith, with Dennis Schroeder, as a guy who's probably now a multiple seconds type player, particularly with $20 million on the books for him next year. So those are 2 veteran players that I think become more attainable in the market because of these deals that we've seen from the Brooklyn Nets. Although it's also possible that both those clubs could wait till a little closer to the trade deadline to make the move and hope that they hold out and hope that somebody decides to give up that first-round pick.
Yeah, I'm curious about, like, we just talked about the market. Like, I know Kuz is younger. He should be better on a better team with less attention on him. We did a whole, Kuzma video where we talked about where he's getting his shots from and all that stuff. And his numbers, they could be a little bit misleading because if he just stops taking all those above the break threes, all of a sudden he looks much better.
Right.
Because it's absolutely killing his percentages. It's crazy. But I'm curious if, like, seeing this, because like we just said, the market, would he actually fetch a first round pick? Maybe like a heavy protected one, sure. That's always out there. But the thing with those is that those oftentimes just convey into second round picks anyway.
Mhm.
So is he maybe gonna get that, or would he be somebody that gets 3, 4, 5 second round picks from a team? That's more or
Well,
less what I would be interested in hearing or concerned
yeah,
about.
I do wonder with a guy like Kyle Kuzma, if, and we'll take a look at his contract, which is a really nice contract here,
Yeah.
23.5 million, then goes down to 21.5 million, then goes down to 19.5 million, basically.
And
So
younger than
you've
DFS
not,
too.
yes, and younger than Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, he's had his issues shooting the ball, not the defensive player that Dorian Finney-Smith is, but certainly more able to create his own shot, to create shots for others. But I think the thing with Kuzma here is maybe now we're talking about like a protected first-round pick. Like, for example, how many teams right now that it's very much out there that the Memphis Grizzlies were offering a first, now it's a heavily protected first, but still it's a first that's fairly likely to convey, since the Grizzlies right now are the 2 seed in the NBA's Western Conference. So if the Grizzlies stay there, then we're talking about the 25th, 26th, 27th pick, something like that in the draft that they'd be offering. Even if they make it top, I mean, the rumor was top 17 protected. Well, that pick's still going to convey. So while the upside is certainly limited on a pick like that, I wonder if there's teams right now calling the Grizzlies and saying, hey, that pick that you wanted to give up for Dorian Finney-Smith, what about our guy instead? We might be interested in that. And Kyle Kuzma could be one of those types of players that Memphis could certainly pivot to.
That could make sense. I don't know if Kuz is exactly what they need, but
Sure.
I think he could be a nice piece for them regardless. One thing with DFS specifically that we didn't talk about in this video that I think is one of the things that makes him fit in a lot of places, and it would have made him fit in Memphis too. It's just the energy, hustle, and toughness. Those intangible things, I think, are things that the Lakers got him. They really needed and can use. Kuz can bring that stuff to a degree, but he's a little bit more of a, I don't know. I don't want to say like finesse guy, but it's just a very different type of player, right? So,
I do think for Kyle Kuzma specifically, and again, Stein mentioned him on the market as being somebody that, the Wizards are looking for first round draft pick, but they're having some challenges getting that. I do think for Kyle Kuzma, the key is going to be Cam Johnson. Once Cam Johnson, because right now that's more the direct competition for Kyle Kuzma. Kuzma's 29, has 3 years under contract. Cam Johnson, 28, 3 years under contract. And I think most teams I would prefer, if any team, I would prefer Cam Johnson over Kyle Kuzma right now. Yeah. So I think that's the domino that has to fall for Kyle Kuzma. If I'm the Washington, though, given how his contract is, if I don't get that first right now, I just hold on to him. If I don't get that first. Whereas if I'm the Chicago Bulls with Nikola Vučević, I got to get this guy off my roster. Similar to what the Brooklyn Nets are doing with getting guys off the roster so they can lose games. Right now, the Chicago Bulls are projected, if everything stayed exactly as is, to give the 11th pick in the draft to the San Antonio Spurs. The pick is top 10 protected. Chicago has to start losing some games if they want to keep their pick. So there's more. I think Vučević does go for second round picks. If I'm the Wizards, I just wait on, if I can't get the first round draft capital, it's going to be a great contract this summer. It'll be a great contract next year too. I'm just waiting. If I'm the Bulls, though, I got to get Nikola Vučević off my roster.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing because, we previously talked about Vučević, the way he's playing here. Will there be some regression? I mean, we're almost approaching halfway of the season. I guess maybe not, but probably, right?
Sure.
But regardless, he's been playing really good. And, he probably is more worth that first round pick, in my opinion. Again, probably heavily protected, but I think they may be in a position where they're so desperate to keep their pick this year in a good draft, where they might just sell low on him. So probably 3 second rounds is about where he's going to go with matching salary, which is, maybe good value depending who you ask. But he's playing so good, I'd like to get more out of him, but they kind of have to make a move sooner than later, right?
He's also 34, and I think there's an understanding that he's not going to do this forever. It's not, if you're a buyer on Nikola Vučević, you're not getting a guy that is going to be with your franchise for the next potentially 10 years or something like that. Where if that was the case, then yes, teams are going to be more willing to give up a first or even 5 years. But I think there's the sense that he is going to fall off. But even you look at the month of December, look at what he's done. I mean, 20 and 10 on 42% from three and 56% from the field. Like, he's been fantastic for the Bulls. Great volume. He doesn't rate out well defensively, but I do think he's a guy that's going to get moved for second rounders, and somebody's going to get a hell of a player. I actually think, what's the most fun is him going back to Orlando, where he was great. Yeah, now that they're dealing with all the injuries that they've suffered and they've lost Mo Wagner, I think back to Orlando would be really interesting. Although now we've got Cole Anthony, apparently just hitting game winners on a nightly basis. So
that's a guy that was buried in their bench. They couldn't get basically any minutes. So
yeah, and he's like, "Hey guys, remember me?" But Nikola Vučević, I think that's it. That's going to be a great value. Whoever gets him for second round picks, because I do think that's probably what he's going to wind up going for. But that wasn't where Stein ended things, though. No, there's a few other names out here, veterans that can be had for second round draft capital. Specifically, you've got Jonas Valanciunas, Malcolm Brogdon is out there for the Washington Wizards as well. Kelly Olynyk, Bruce Brown is one that's really interesting, that he can be had for second round draft capital. Just made his season debut for the Toronto Raptors. Jordan Clarkson, we've talked a bit about him, but Valanciunas, somebody will get him for second round picks. I would rather have Vučević. There's no question. It's not close. I would rather have Vučević, but Valanciunas is cheaper in terms of how much you actually have to pay him. Brogdon, can he stay healthy? Who knows? $22.5 million. But Bruce Brown with the Toronto Raptors, he's the kind of guy. It's kind of similar to a Dorian Finney-Smith, just a guard version of that, in that he's pretty plug and play. Not saying he's the exact same type of player, because he's not. Much more creation ability than Dorian Finney-Smith, but a very plug and play player that you could put in just about anywhere, and he's a good fit. Made his season debut, 28 years old, and if he could be had for second round picks, the only challenge there is stacking up enough salary to get to the $23 million. But if he's healthy, I think he's a guard that a lot of contenders will be very interested in.
Yeah, I agree with you. Assuming that he's able to be out there and be healthy, his archetype is one that could fit in a lot of places, and a lot of teams should be looking for him. I always kind of, with him, one of the things that always stands out to me is that he's able to, guard up a little bit. I don't think that you could rely on him the way that Brooklyn tried to, where they were putting him out there as a small ball five and stuff like that. But for a couple of possessions, he can hold his own guarding up a little bit too. As a smaller guy, that's pretty great. So I think that Bruce is probably one of the more intriguing names on the market. We talked about other guys. Kelly, I think, could be a fun player as well in a lot of different situations as a spacing big. And I also like him with his passing and stuff like that. He could be a fun player to have. But again, also another older guy here, got a $12 million, $13 million deal next year. Not a bad contract though, but I think if you get some of these guys like Kelly or basically any of these guys, I think on a contending team, they could be the piece or a part of, multiple pieces that puts you over the edge that you're looking to get. Obviously, there's some variance there. Like if you got, the better guys in the market like Vučević or something, that would be a little bit different. But I think these guys can be very helpful too.
Yeah, like Jakob Poeltl, I can understand if the Raptors would want a first round pick for him. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if he's really going to be a bit, because he's 29. But Vučević, Kelly Olynyk, Robert Williams, I wouldn't, if I'm the Blazers, I may tell everybody I want a first round pick, but I wouldn't assume that I'm going to get it. There's some really interesting quality players that can be had out there for second round draft capital. Bruce Brown, being another one. And the Raptors, look, the Raptors picked up the $23 million on Bruce Brown's deal for this year solely to trade him. It's not like they're trying to win right now. They've lost 10 in a row. They are very much full tank. They're trying to trade him. So they have to move him by the trade deadline, or he's just going to fall off their books for nothing. So if they can find a way to get, and the key is going to be, can they find an expiring contract they can get so they're not taking on future money? But if they can pick up a couple of seconds and an expiring contract for Bruce Brown, I think they would love to do something like that. But let me throw one last value guy at you, and I'm talking about guys that can be had for second round picks. What about Lonzo? Lonzo Ball, very available with the Chicago Bulls. The rumor is they're willing to move him for second round draft capital. I don't expect the move to be made till closer to the deadline. I think it's going to take the month of January for teams to be okay with Lonzo's injury history. But what do you think about Lonzo Ball being available for second round draft capital? Does somebody bite on that?
I know that he's had health issues, obviously, but I think if he's available, you should, and he's playing, you should probably bite on it. Assuming, because what are they asking for? Two seconds, or
second round draft capital. Yeah.
1 second. Like, what are, because I think that matters too. You're not giving up 3 seconds. You probably aren't
No.
giving up 2. But if you can get them for expiring contracts, and which I guess they don't really need, but like a second round pick, you can kind of make that work. So I think that's somebody that like can fit into multiple places. We've talked about Lonzo a lot, and I really like his archetype as well. He can be somebody off the bench for you as a playmaker, 3-and-D guard / swing man there for you. He's got great size. He's just a really good player, in theory, that can fit for you in a lot of different places. So I don't really have much else to say about him, but we've talked about him a lot.
Here's what we need to see. We need to see this number. Assuming I'm putting it up. There we go. We need to see this number. The 3-point percentage needs to bounce back up. He's at 31% from 3 right now in the month of December. That needs to bounce back up to that 37, 38% or so that we saw when he was healthy last years ago. And then you've got something, because defensively, he gives you something on the floor. He's a ball mover. He can do some exciting things. You look at this game against Toronto, 7 assists, 6 rebounds, a block, a steal, 8 points. He didn't shoot the ball particularly well that game, but there's not a lot of guys that can give you that kind of versatility where they can help you on the boards. They can move the ball, give you a block, give you a steal. He's actually a pretty decent shot blocker for a guard, gets steals for you, can do some things defensively. He becomes an interesting guy. Yeah, exactly. 18 minutes right now. But I think he needs the month of January to get back on track, and then he becomes a much more interesting name out there on the market. But again, another guy, like if you're a contending team right now and you have second-round picks, especially second-round picks and expiring contracts, there are moves to be made out here on the market.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's going to come down to which teams want it the most, right? Which ones feel like their team is in a position where, all right, if we add Alonzo, in theory, if he's out there and he's playing well in January, does he give us what we need to put us over the edge to win a championship this year? And I think that's going to be really interesting, which teams decide to make these types of moves for these guys. But also from the other perspective, a lot of these teams have their own draft picks. They need to get off these guys, and they're going to try to do so because this is a great draft. And if you want to bottom out, it's time to start. And some of these teams have already started because we've seen several trades already at an earlier point than we typically do. So pretty interesting.
Let's go. It's a great sign for the trade market. All right, everybody, let us know your thoughts. Who's the most valuable player that you can get right now for second-round draft capital? Let us know in the comment section. And check out our latest video breaking down the Dorian Finney-Smith trade and what it means for the trade market as a whole. Check that out right now.